Welcome to Let's Be Well Together podcast. We're your wellness check-in team. We talk about different categories of wellness and seeking balance between them. It all stems from my book, Accidentally Well. And there's overview info on our website, letsbewelltogether.com.
This is episode 23.
We're back for another week, and it's Sammy and John. And Sammy, you said you saw something interesting. What's on your mind today?
Yeah, I did. I was scrolling through TikTok, as I do every day.
You have to teach me how to do that sometime. I've got a TikTok account now.
Yeah.
For Let's Be Well Together.
Yeah.
And I can't figure it out, but that's another conversation.
It takes a while. I'm still learning, and it's my job. So,
okay.
Yeah. But I was scrolling through it, and I came across this page, and it's a girl who's speaking about her questions that she's brought up, or that she's started to learn about herself. And she was talking about, hearing the phrase oh, that's just how John is. That's just, you grow up hearing that a lot. At least I did. I grew up a lot hearing, that's just how Sammy is, whether it's being a perfectionist or being a really hard worker. And sometimes those things aren't always as they seem. So some good examples she brings up is, that's just how Sammy is. I'll use me as an example. So that's just how Sammy is, and referring to me being a perfectionist. And then she goes, or is it that she only received that love and affection when she did things perfect? Or, they're a very loud talker. Oh, that's just how John is. He's just very loud. But is it really, growing up, they never felt heard. So then they speak very loud so everybody in the room can hear them. So I thought it was really interesting because that's definitely something that I've grown up hearing, whether it's about myself or about someone else, or I still hear people say that, especially being a dance teacher, that's just how they are. They're just very shy, very quiet. But sometimes there's stuff that's going on behind that. And her main question, is surrounding the idea of nature versus nurture. So is that just how they are? Or were they taught to learn these things? And sometimes hearing that may actually be a negative thing, even though sometimes people think it's positive because they're just accepting that person. But maybe they're actually dealing with a lot of things, childhood traumas and wounds that they haven't fully dealt with.
It's becoming obvious. We started this show to talk about wellness-related issues, to raise awareness to wellness-related issues, to talk about theories. And what's becoming obvious to me is the main theory, the main thing that we talk about is self-awareness. Mm-hmm. And I actually have thought a lot, nature and nurture is something that historically is a big issue in philosophy.
Yeah.
So it's something I studied. It's something I think about a lot. But let me tell you one thing, though, and it's not a joke. It's just interesting, which is we have 3 kids.
Yeah.
They grew up with the same parents. We acted pretty much the same. Now, sure, you're a little different. You take more pictures of the first child as a quick example.
Yeah.
They're so different. Mm-hmm. So there's definitely some nature there. People definitely have some characteristics that they're prone towards. Mm-hmm. I have no idea where that comes from. But having said that, nurture is huge.
Yeah.
So when I hear what you're talking about, I'm thinking what I really love about that TikTok video is she's saying, what is happening? Mm-hmm. Which is what we say. Ask yourself, what is happening here?
Yeah.
And I think it's not to be offensive to anyone, but I think it's too easy to say nature or nurture.
Right. Yeah, definitely.
And whichever one is the out that you want, you say that's what it is.
Right.
So if you don't want to admit to yourself that you've got a certain personality trait that maybe you've developed on your own, that's a bad trait, then you say, God darn it, nurture.
Right.
Right. And if there's something good about yourself, that's nature. But I think you have to think about both. So she has some great questions,
Yeah. Yeah.
And even Sheila and I were watching, we were watching something on Netflix. I think it was The Unbreakable somebody.
Yeah.
The Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a joke, but the psychiatrist says everything goes back to you when you were a kid.
Yeah.
In one of the episodes. And even though it was kind of a joke, I did think, probably a lot of our issues go back to when we were kids.
100%. I agree. A lot of everything, just how you are as a person, trails back to being a child and how you grew up. But I also agree that, I am one of 4 and we are all completely different. I'd say me and my brother are similar in some ways, and me and my sister are similar in some ways. My other brother, we all have some similarities. But we are all very different people, and that's just really interesting to see. And something I do like at the end of that video, she says, I'm not going to take that's just how this person is at face value anymore. She said, because I don't think that's what it is. Like, there's so much more about this person, and maybe they need to do some self-reflection on why they're acting that way or why they get anxious in this certain situation. But also maybe other people within their circle need to stop just saying like that's just who they are and actually think, is there something I'm doing that could be affecting the way that this person is reacting or feeling? Or I know it's really hard for parents to hear it as well, that, you know, like childhood traumas, because it really puts a lot of blame on the parents. And, you know, you can be an amazing parent, you can be the perfect parent, but it's still, there's going to be stuff that has affected your children. So it's not necessarily a negative thing. It's just something that people have to do reflection on and understand, and, you know, to grow as a person, I think. There's
just so many ways I could take that and go off with it. Like, for example, I'm going to set aside the part about, you're right, like a parent, it's so hard because if a child comes up and they're saying, I have a problem, I have an issue, and you're partially to blame, the parent is like, you got to be kidding me. I mean, I did so much for you and I've done all this stuff and, you know, where's the gratitude? That can happen.
Yes.
But let's not go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah.
I got to speak for myself because in the context of nature nurture, thinking about my own issues as I approach them, wondering if I'm repeating things that I learned from others, that ties in with something else that I do too. So if I have a problem to solve and knowing that there's not enough time in the day, I try and prioritize things. So I try and figure out, okay, what's the most immediate thing that has to happen?
Right.
Let me get past that. And then if I have more time, I can do more. So in the context of what we're talking about, I worry a little bit when people talk about nature nurture that they're going down a rabbit hole.
Right.
Because I've done it myself. So let's say there's some characteristic that I get angry too quickly, which I do. I react too quickly and get angry.
Yep.
And so that's something I want to change in myself. Well, the main thing I should focus on is, how do I do that?
Yeah.
Do I count to 10? Do I take a deep breath? Do I not respond for a certain amount of time? I'm thinking of the actual techniques that I have to employ to stop that characteristic in myself. And it's hard. And then that's priority number one. And then I start thinking a little bit about nature nurture. And I try not to be dismissive. I try not to just always blame. And I try and be fair in where it came from. But I don't do that to allocate blame. I do that to try and figure out what I need to address.
Definitely, yeah. And I think it's really important to focus on yourself because you can only really control your own actions, your own reactions. And it's really hard to control how your parents would react, how your kids would react, how your, you know, partner would react. So, yeah, but I also think it is important to look back so then you can really dig in and see, where does this come from, to be able to move forward. And maybe, you know, you don't place blame because everybody's just trying to do their best, right? But it is important to dig deep and think, this is how maybe I grew up and how can I change that moving forward? Because to change those reactions and actions in the present, I feel like you do have to look into what made you this way, I guess.
It's critical. Yeah. And for sure, the reason why I then go on to try and analyze where it came from.
Yeah.
I'm a parent, right? So I don't want to repeat mistakes.
Definitely.
So if I and so like at the end of the day, if I decide, you know, like let's say I decided my dad had some characteristic that I saw something all the time that I wished he didn't do and, you know, probably shouldn't have done. And that's what I conclude. It's happened.
Yeah, there's
I'm older
point.
now.
Yeah.
You know, maybe other people would tell me, John, you should talk to them about that. Okay, well, I'm just talking about my own experiences. I don't really do that. There's no point. But what I do is I try not to do that with my children.
Yes.
Because I honestly believe that a lot of the stuff that we went through that was bad, it's just too easy for us to just fall back to that position and history repeats itself.
Definitely. And if you're sitting there and like stewing in the anger, you're just staying in that spot. So, you know, by letting that go and moving forward, that's how you know, excel and grow within your own life.
And then so that's the nurture side. You don't want to repeat mistakes. And then in fairness, on the nature side, like I'm prone to some anxiety. I'm prone to depression at times. I'm prone to my head spinning. And the reason that's important to understand that, where I think part of that is nature, is I can tell my kids that.
Right.
These are characteristics I have, so be careful because you might have them.
And maybe even just the fact that you're being open and honest about things that you're feeling, it makes them feel safe and open about maybe things that they're feeling, and it creates an open space, which I think is important.
Exactly. Or at least they're alert to the possibility.
Yeah.
And that's one way it plays out. There's lots of ways.
Yeah.
So anyway, I thought that was fascinating. I really like that.
Very.
And so I have to figure out how to use TikTok.
Yeah, TikTok has a lot of good info.
Guests are giving their time, expanding our minds.
We are in the area of artistic wellness today, and we're welcoming back stand-up comedian Alexander MacFarlane, whose stage name is Sandy MacFarlane, who produces amazing comedy shows through Rusty Nail Comedy. You'll recall that Sandy got into comedy at a late age when a friend suggested he try it at a stand-up competition at London, Ontario Yuck Yucks in 2008. He won and did so well that he opened for the Yuck headliners that same weekend. Rusty Nail produces comedy shows all over Southern Ontario, but mainly in Waterloo region. In August 2020, Rusty Nail found a home at the Crazy Canuck restaurant in downtown Kitchener. Every Friday and Saturday night, the Crazy Canuck turns into Rusty Nail Comedy Club, Waterloo region's only comedy club. And Rusty Nail's comedy philosophy is, comedy will save the world, which I hope is true. Alex is married to Lynn McDonald. As you guys know, Sheila and I are big Crazy Canuck and Rusty Nail fans, so it's great to have you back, Sandy.
I really appreciate you having me. Thank you.
Last time we talked generally about comedy and mental health, and today I want to focus on something I've mentioned on the show before. When I think it was my first day of university, a philosophy prof said, poets ask the questions and philosophers try to answer them. And for whatever reason, it stuck with me. And a lot of times when I'm in a whole bunch of different situations, I find myself thinking, I wonder who the poet is in this room, and I wonder who the philosophers are, and what am I? And in that context, when I watch comedians, I often feel, and I do think they're artists and poets, and I do definitely get the impression that they're asking questions, but I don't want to be presumptuous. So this is a chance for me to ask at least one comedian what they think. Do you think comedians are up there asking the audience questions and hoping the audience thinks about it, becomes a philosopher for a bit and tries to figure out, if I saw this maybe unfair thing or this different thing, what are you guys going to do about it? What are you going to think about it?
100%. Again, I'm not going to speak for all comedians, but I do know if you look at even some of the most, or the biggest comedians, or the ones their name, they do ask questions, right? The Chappelles, the Jon Stewarts, Trevor Noahs. And I really do think comedians look at the world a different way. They absorb information differently and regurgitate it differently than other people. There's been time, pretty much every Friday and Saturday night, actually, there will be a comedian that will do a joke, and I'll say to myself, how did I not think about that?
Yeah, it's something that should be so obvious, but
it's funny because in social settings, a lot of times when I do bring up some stuff that maybe the people didn't look at the same way I did, it's not the same as being on stage. Sometimes there's a little wait a second.
Chill out.
Yeah. But that's really how comedy was born, right? Like satirical comic strips and, questioning authority, questioning politicians, questioning, things that are going on. George Carlin, that was his whole thing. That guy predicted the subprime mortgage crisis in the U.S. in 2005.
Right.
5 years before it even happened, right? And he always wondered why people didn't see that, right?
Well, I think part of the issue is, I was just saying this off tape, which is, and I've heard a couple comedians mention it, is I wish I didn't see everything that I see. Yeah. I feel as if a lot of comedians see the world in a different way, in the sense that they see more going on than I see. And you're right. When they do see it and they bring it up and then I see it, I wonder how I didn't see it in the first place.
Yeah, it's a good and bad thing, to be honest. There are times where most comedians I know I certainly am a very empathetic person, so I absorb people's feelings a lot. So when you see some things that you know is not just or you don't think is right and other people don't, it not necessarily is a good thing. Sometimes, you know, you eat that and you think about it and nobody else does. But when you can get up on stage and get people to think a different way and make them laugh at the same time, man, that's gold, right?
Yeah, it sounds really hard though, like to make people laugh, but also, but you know, I don't know, maybe that's.
I try and stay away. Political humor is very hard too, right?
Right.
So you got to, it better be funny if you're going to hit it. And it's not necessarily these huge social issues. There's just like I do this one thing about like Wendy's, their commercial right now is about how they serve hot and crispy fries. And my whole thing is, haven't you always supposed to be doing that? Right. Like, why is that now a thing in 2022? Are you going to tell you to cook the burgers too? What do you mean? Right?
No, yeah, I agree. It doesn't have to be like deep insights, but I guess the problem is if you're seeing more of the world, you see some light stuff and you see some funny stuff and you see some not so great stuff. And I think I have heard a couple of comedians almost lament that I wish I didn't have this superpower. Like, I don't want it because sometimes I just want to go through it, look at that. I want to see the same thing you see.
Yeah.
Bland.
And the empathy part's a big side of that too, right? I don't want to get too into it, but some of the biggest comedians in the history of stand-up comedy were unbelievably depressed people.
Right.
Right. So their whole thing was, if I make other people laugh, it will make me happy. So that was their thing. Robin Williams, classic example.
Right.
If I can make everybody else laugh, then I can be happy, which is a weird thing to think about if you think about it. You want other people to be happy so you can be. Right?
Well, I think in part shows the complexity of mental health struggles.
100%.
And why, thankfully, a lot of the people who come on our show are doing what they can to break down the stigma so that we can normalize discussion. And, you know, every time I see Robin Williams' picture, I'm sad.
Yeah, me too.
And I'm not judgmental.
No.
I'm not one of these people that, you know, that tries to judge it, because I feel like a person like Robin Williams probably was confronted with that kind of life-threatening question 1,000 times, and 999 times he got past it, and one time he didn't.
Agreed.
Okay, so, but I guess the other issue is if you've got these insights, it can make you a target too. Like we were talking briefly before too about how, not to get too political, but if you have situations where a country gets taken over and by some kind of despot, they often target comedians in the early phases.
Well, I mean, I think it's human nature to get defensive when somebody's criticizing you. Now you're a narcissistic, tyrannical dictator. Right. Yeah. I mean, again, don't want to dive too deep into it or on the example part of it, but pretty much any dictatorship government that took over something, artists, including comedians, satirical for sure, were some of the first people that they censored or shut down or closed down, right? In the same breath as music, right? And anything that questions anything, right? So multiple examples through the world. Like Syria was one of the big ones. A big comedian in Syria got jailed and for criticizing, right? A lot of those comedians from areas of the world where there is conflict, and not just that, but even here we have conflict and stuff. But a lot of them have to leave where they are, or just like a journalist would be scared of being jailed for talking the way they talk, right? So it's definitely a thing where those governments or those people or whatever you want to look at it, don't like being criticized in any respect. And some of the first people that are going to do it are comedians. Right.
Right. Okay, well, let's shift it back to somewhere like the Crazy Canuck.
Yeah.
And let's say, I've been there and I've seen all kinds of different ways of approaching comedy. And certainly there have been a couple times where the comedians are really challenging us as the audience. And, they're making us laugh, but they do also want to make a point.
Yeah.
And there's something that they saw, whether it's to do with race or something else, and they're saying, "Hey guys, this is just not right." And I'm just wondering, like, I'm not sure if you've ever done that kind of bit, but what are you hoping to achieve there? I mean, you're trying to get laughs, but you're also, I presume, you're just trying to affect change, maybe?
Sure. For me, I do some political humor, mostly like provincial or federal,
right?
Or go after somebody in our neighbors that I don't agree with, right? Obviously, the last 2 to 4 years have been pretty ripe for stuff like that. Certainly,
right.
The last 2 years of, or the last year, some divisions, right? There's been obviously a lot of comedians talking about stuff like that. For me, my goal is to get a laugh. That really is goal number one. Goal number two might be more of an ego thing. I have the microphone. I'll say whatever the hell I want.
Right.
So if I don't like a politician or I don't like the way something is, I'll say it. Again, refer to number one. I always try and make it funny.
Right.
I would say number three is to get some sort of knowledge out there. Like, did you even know this, right? I won't say it like that. I'm not trying to condescend anybody, but sometimes it's surprising how little people know, right? So I will say a topical story that happened in the news, and sometimes I'm surprised at how little people actually had heard about it.
Well, I gotta admit, there were times during COVID where I just kind of shut down the news. I didn't want to hear it. I'll really quickly address that. In the beginning, there wasn't a lot of, like, that first 6-7 months when we were really doing shows, a lot of shows at the Canuck, and Rusty Nail was really starting to become a big thing, and we were selling out all these shows. There wasn't a lot of that. It was a lot of let's laugh, classic jokes. It's only been in the last little bit that there's been a little more talking about different things that are happening politically. Like, in the beginning, I made fun of Doug Ford and Justin Trudeau, and I made fun of politicians because they loved being in front of the camera, right? Because they're narcissists, right? Of course, like, only a narcissist can wake up in the morning, look in the mirror, and go, "Yeah, I can run this country or this province," right? So, I made fun of everybody, and like, at just how the ridiculous of them talking to us every single day at 11. But it was a lot. Like, it was a different spirit, right? Like, it was really
we were all in it together then. Yeah. It wasn't until later that it got a little. Yeah, lately, it's, again, humor is the number one goal. So even in the last 6 months with, some divisions, our audience is intelligent. They know what's going on. And even the ones that aren't really up on the news because they don't want to be, it's got to be funny, period. So it's a little more now, but...
Well, just to loop back to where we started, I do find it interesting that being on stage, connecting with all these people on a regular basis, you actually got the feel of a changing world and a changing outlook, and patience starting to wear thin, and people taking a different view, and what used to be funny, now you're taking sides and all that stuff.
Yeah, that's funny. I should really take stock in it, because it's weird. I was talking to my wife the other night. It feels like this last 2 years has gone at warp speed and slow-mo at the same time. I don't know how that's possible.
I agree.
But I think we talked, like, there just hasn't been a lot of markers. Like, I went on vacation in do-to-do. Or my daughter got married last week. There has been no marker, so it's just been this long 1 year that's 2 years long,
which feels like 3.
It really feels like 3, but it's been almost exactly 2 years this week.
I know, but I keep, for whatever reason, people say,
because it was
when it started, and I'm like, and I think it was 2019, and then someone says no, it was 2020. I'm like, God, it feels like it was 2020.
Yeah, right. But it's funny. It's definitely. I have seen the changes and those different tranches of how people are feeling, and a lot of comedians have and do a lot of jokes about it. Rob Bebenick, who's originally from Kitchener, one of the biggest comedians in Canada right now, he talks about how he's like, remember, we were all in it together and we're all singing to each other from balconies, and then 6 months later somebody was singing and we went, He just gave the finger to the guy. It's like, yeah, things changed.
Okay, well, just like last time, we could keep going, but we're kind of at the end. So, yeah, thanks very much. But I definitely am going to keep enjoying the insights that I get from the comedians when I go. And I will be a bit of a philosopher. I like to enjoy myself. But if there's a really good question that's asked, I'll think about it the next day maybe. So here we are at the end. And now, from the last time, there's a question I ask every guest, because we think about different areas of wellness. And the question is, are you currently neglecting an area of wellness in your life? And if so, can you think of even one thing you can do to foster wellness in that area?
I had a quick question. When on the environmental, what is explain that to me.
Well, the bottom line is, how can you have a healthy and well life in an environment that's polluted or not proper? Like, we need to protect the world we live in. And that's one side of it, protection of the environment so that we can enjoy it. But another side is, there's a lot of studies that tell you, for example, that if you go for a walk in the forest, it literally lowers your cortisol level. Cortisol is a chemical that's created through stress.
Right.
So connecting with nature is another side of environmental, where it calms you. It relaxes you. It basically, you're going back to a position where you feel at home.
Well, I'm glad I asked, because that's what I thought was the idea there. So it's the second part for me. I was mentioning to you off air that last year I'd lost my dog, and I'm 11 years I had him, and he brought me outside. He was a St. Bernard too. So January, February was his time to shine. Right. So I had to go out in -20. So I would say for me right now, I'm not going out into nature enough and really absorbing that. And that's something that, you know what, you've really made me realize that, actually, because again, my mom's out in Innerkip, beautiful land out there, and I haven't been out as much the last 2 years because of the pandemic. But yeah, that's definitely it. That's definitely something that I've been neglecting. Well,
a big focus of our podcast is on physical wellness. That if you don't have physical wellness, or when you do have physical wellness, it helps so many other categories. And another one is environment. So, but again, a lot of people, when you talk about physical wellness, they think, being on a bike and spin class and super hard and really high intensity. But what I say is, just go for a walk. Just go for a long walk on a trail. And the good news about Kitchener, if you look online, you'll find paths along the Grand River and
amazing spots.
I'm sure Innerkip has a beautiful stuff. So.
Yeah, and even in the city, like the Iron Horse Trail through uptown in Kitchener, amazing. Yeah,
you'll often find me running on the Iron Horse Trail.
Yeah, I love that, love it. So we, weather's getting a little better, so it's time to be outside more and soak that in.
Well, I hope you get a chance to do that. In the meantime, thanks so much for doing another interview. I really appreciate it, Sandy.
I can't thank you enough, John. I appreciate your support of the show, too. Thank you.
I'm Cameron, and welcome to another installment of The Adventures of the Starving Artist. It's Jazzfest here in Ottawa this week, and the company I teach with, Rockstar Music, has a booth. I guess it's really a tent, but we call it a booth, set up at the festival. So I spent most of my Saturday and Sunday manning the booth with a few of the other team members, where we were offering music lessons, of course, but also a pretty cool raffle where you had a chance to win a Telecaster or a ukulele and some lessons to go with it. Pretty cool. As a plus, we also had a button making station, so the kids, or me, could make our own buttons and wear them at the festival. There were some good ones, some creative ones. We also had a giant board called Pin City, where we had all these extra buttons made, and kids could make one, and then if they saw another they liked, they could take it or trade or whatever. It was fun. We lined up a few new students for many of our teachers here in the region, which is excellent, myself included. In fact, I have one of those new students tonight for her very first guitar lesson. Should be fun. As an added bonus, because, it was a pretty sweet gig, don't get me wrong. It was a little hot, especially on Saturday. Whew. And long days on your feet, 10 hours plus. But definitely worth it, because the location of our booth was pretty well straight back from the main stage, which means in the evening, when the bands really start going and people, are less likely to come up to the booth and inquire about lessons. We had a few, but, it drops off a bit. We got a free show, basically. Get to sit there and take in all the sets. So I had the privilege of listening to some incredible players this weekend. Charles Lloyd, wicked sax player. His whole band was just all stars. On Sunday, so yesterday, I caught the Blind Boys doing a really fun blues set. That was a good one. Foot stomping, head nodding. They even finished their set with an encore Stevie Wonder tune. It was wicked. Yeah, just immense talent all over. I also got a little break on Saturday where the owner of Rockstar Music, his name is Gal, he took me over to check out a band on the other stage that was a little further from our booth called Busty and the Bass, and I had never heard of them, but wow, they were cool. Really fun set. So all in all, it's been a very busy, full, jam-packed, but excellent weekend. Going forward, I don't really have a day off until sometime in August. So the last few days of June and the whole month of July, it's pretty well full steam ahead. And while I know it's going to be a tiring month, I am looking forward to it because it's full of performance. So you might remember I'll be driving quite a bit. We're performing for Canada Day with Shy Harry out in Ayr. And we have a few other performances around then. And several weddings coming up in July. So it's going to be a fun month. I look forward to filling you in on all things musical as they unfold and connecting with some of these new students. But for now, that's the update. Thanks so much for listening, and I hope you have a great week. I'm Cameron. This is The Starving Artist. Until next time.
If you like what we're doing and enjoy the show, please spread the word about us. Connect with us on social media. Follow our Instagram account. It's at lets.be.well.together. Please also subscribe to us and rate us on your favorite podcast platform.
Move that body like we're meant to do.
There is a place on my run that is a rock climbing center, and it's on most of my routes, so I pass it 2, sometimes 3 times a week. And I've always wondered about it. I hear all these great things about rock climbing, and so imagine how happy I was to find out that a friend of a friend, Brad Mills, is someone who enjoys rock climbing. I get a chance to talk to him and ask him what he does and why he likes it. So hi, Brad.
Hey, John. Thanks for having me on the podcast.
Oh, it's amazing. And so just maybe you could start by just telling us if you go to like a rock climbing place as opposed to going to Rattlesnake Point. So you're going to a building that has rock climbing. Just generally describe what happens, what you do, and how it works.
Yeah, sure thing. So I go to a local rock climbing gym here in the Waterloo region called Grand River Rocks. They have a location in Kitchener and in Waterloo. I've been climbing there for about 3 years total now, and it is actually a very simple activity to get into if you really want to do it. You just sign a waiver saying that if you get hurt, you're not going to get them in trouble. You go to the gym one day and you just sign up for a day package. That will include all the equipment you need, which is some shoes and a harness. They will give you a quick lesson on how to climb and some of the rules of the gym. And then you are free to climb all day, actually.
And do you have to kind of take turns on the wall? Are there spots for everybody? How does that work?
Yeah, so there are multiple places to climb throughout the gym. They're all graded, so you would climb based on the grade of difficulty you feel that you could actually climb. And yes, there are some rules that you shouldn't be too close to someone else if they're climbing. That is a safety concern. But there are dozens and dozens of different climbs in the gym, so you can always find something that you can climb if someone else is climbing a route that you would like to climb.
So when I think about it, I think, oh no, like I probably need really strong arms. I'm probably a little heavy at times to do that. I think of rock climbers as being pretty good shape, like in terms of being strong and mobile and flexible. How does it work with you? Like, what has it developed in you by doing rock climbing?
So I thought the same way as you. So the back muscles are a very big contributor into it, but I've actually found during my climbing, legs are a very big part of it. So it's just one of those things where it's a lot easier to push yourself up the wall with your legs than it is to pull yourself up with your arms.
Good point.
I've noticed from rock climbing that just my balance and my core strength has actually gone up tremendously. And that's not even something that I focused on with my climbing. It's just kind of something that happened.
I love that because to me, the core is just so important for so many things, and especially on making me feel great when my core is getting work. And that sounds like a fun way to do it. What about, have you noticed a change in your outlook or how you feel or how you enjoy things?
Yeah, so definitely it's a big stress reliever for me. So it just kind of, when you're climbing the rock climbing wall, that is the only thing you are thinking about is holding on to that little hold as hard as you can. And the only thing you want to do is make it to the top. So it's kind of a really good way to kind of unwind and de-stress after a long day of work. So I've noticed that before I climb, I'm looking forward to it. And then after I climb, I feel a huge stress relief and almost like a mental stimulation because it's almost like a big problem solving activity where it's not just pulling yourself up the wall. There's a bit of thought and strategy on how you'd actually like to climb the wall.
Yeah, I bet you, I can imagine that. So I can imagine you might try the same wall and you learn some lessons and maybe the second time you do it different, the fifth time you do it different until finally like the eighth time you have this great way up.
Yes, that's exactly it. You know, it just, I had to lean to the left a little bit more this time and it made that move that much easier.
And okay, so what about if you fall? Like you talk about a harness, how does that work? Like do you fall and hurt yourself? How do you do it?
So, well, the one thing actually, there's actually two types of climbing. There's one called bouldering. That is the type of climbing that I gravitate most towards. That is climbing up a shorter route, but there's actually no rope attached to you. It is small enough that if you were to fall from the top of the wall, you'd fall on a big mat and chances are you would be fine. So that's the climbing I like to do. But in the climbing where you're tied in with the rope, I do that as well. And that was actually kind of something I had to train myself to kind of overcome the fear of falling. So that was just something I had to go on the wall and I just had to try something that I knew I was going to fall and just let it happen.
That's amazing.
So kind of get over that fear of falling.
Okay, well, believe it or not, we are burned through our time, but it sounds amazing. It's and I really love the idea of it being a fun way to develop your core. And what's fascinating too is it sounds like it gives you kind of the same stress relief that a lot of other physical activity does. So thanks very much for coming on and telling us a little bit about rock climbing.
Oh, you're welcome, and thanks for having me on. It was really great to be here.
There's a thought. Popped up while running.
We all change over time without even really noticing it. So it's the same story. You'll hear the same story from many of us old fogies, which is you think back to your days in high school and university age, or maybe you went to college or trade school, but that age. And lots of us, we wanted to change the world. We wanted to make it a better place. And then life gets in the way, right? You just get really busy, family and kids and work and everything else. And then, at a certain point, a lot of us just kind of didn't think about it at all. And then we said, hey, I forgot that I'm supposed to change the world. And then we're like, well, I can't because I'm too busy and I'm too small. I'm just a little cog in a big machine. I can't make a difference. But maybe I can make a difference in my little space. And that is important. It's really good. You can make a difference in your house. You can make a difference in the way you treat your family, in the way you treat your own environment. So yeah, okay. And we kind of settled into that, changing the world in these little ways. But something in the back of my head, a lot of times, especially when I'm out for a run, it's saying, hey, remember that thing you wanted to do? Like you can make a bigger difference. And then I think, oh, that's just egotistical. What makes you think you're so great that you can change the world? But something there is still saying, hey, try and make a difference. Try and help more people. And one of the things I love now is, talking to Sammy as a younger co-host, I like to talk to millennials now and Gen Zs about stuff, and getting in contact with them. That's still how they feel, right? Like they still have that great feeling, and it's amazing. And I hope they do change the world for the better. And it's rubbing off on me a bit. It's re-energizing me. And part of this whole exercise with the podcast is trying to reach out. So we build a community. And maybe if we start talking to each other, more and more of us, we can work together. And even though maybe not individually, we can make this huge change, but maybe collectively as a group, we can make a great difference in the world and make it better. It's me.
Yeah. Just let me say, flip side of the coin.
So we were having an argument off tape, so we thought we may as well just bring it on tape, may as well hit record. And so, I don't know, Sheila, what were you saying about not being able to say stuff?
Oh, I was just saying that whenever we're taping, John always gives me dirty looks because I'm not allowed to say this and I'm not allowed to say that, and then we stop it and then argue about it and then come back and be like, "Hi everyone, we are back," and I have to be really nice. But I like to say what I say, and he says that you can't do that. You can't just say whatever you want. And I said, that's who I am. I say crazy things all the time.
Yeah, but the thing, I think what you were saying was you were listening, because you listen to the podcast at work, right?
Yeah.
Like when you're driving.
Yeah.
And you were saying you think you sound boring because somehow I tie your hands?
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
I don't understand that.
Politically correct. We have to be politically correct. I'm like, this flip side is when you don't have to be politically correct. This is our time.
First of all, I never said politically correct. So there's general rules.
Okay, I have to be PG. I don't know what I have to be.
Well, why don't we talk about it? Why don't we talk about it? Because you're not agreeing with. Okay, here's the problem. On this show, we're not out to teach people stuff.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so we're not experts. Right?
Well,
No, we're not experts.
Okay, fine.
So if you, for example, if we're talking about
having a conversation.
But if we're talking about some kind of drug we heard about,
yeah,
and you say you should take that, I'm like, you can't say that because we don't know anything about prescribing drugs.
Yeah, well, I don't take drugs. I don't even know what you're talking about.
Well, there's a show that's going to come up at some point about, I think, hormones or something. And at a certain point during that discussion, you were talking about, yes, you should do this or that, or this is available. It sounds
interesting. But I was like, it sounds interesting. You should look into it. I don't think I'm telling people to do it.
So then I balk and I'm like, wait a minute, you can't. And so then so that's one topic is anytime that there should be advice coming from a qualified person, and I hear somebody on the show trying to saying something that sounds like advice that should be coming from a qualified person, I balk. I'm like, you can't say that. So I think that's not unfair. So I'm not trying to tie your hands. I'm not trying to. So another one is, I'm not out here to diss anybody or any industry or any group.
Yeah, you're always so nice. He's really not that nice. That's my point all the time. Everyone thinks he's so nice. He's not that nice.
I'm not nice. I agree with that. And my job, it's very adversarial.
Yeah.
And for sure, I'm trying to say, don't believe that guy, believe this guy. But having said that, what's the purpose of this show? The purpose of this show isn't to investigate industries and
No. I know, but we can just shoot the shit sometimes. Can't we do that and just be like, oh, that's what I think. This is what you think. Oh, that's cool.
Right. But I don't want to go. Yes, but I don't want to go after any specific person or.
No. Me neither.
Right. So if you make a comment about a certain industry and say that I read this study on Google and it shows that this product doesn't work. And then I'm like, you can't do that. We're not the experts who assess products.
But I'm not saying that they're an expert. We're just saying that we read this.
I know, but
I read this article. This was interesting. I wonder.
Well, I'm not too, if you think about a lot of the controversies that are out right now too, that's what a lot of people say. It's fair game to talk about anything on Google. I worry about being an echo chamber for false news.
Right.
There's so many conspiracy theories. There's so much false information. There's so much agenda. The person who wrote that article, let's say there's an industry and someone says some product, even though we all think it's healthy, is not healthy.
Right.
Who wrote that article? Is it somebody who sells a product in a competing business and just doesn't want us to use it?
Right.
So if we say, hey, I saw this article on Google and we become an echo chamber, it picks up steam.
Right. Yeah, no, I get that. But my point is for that particular argument that we're having that none of you even know what we're talking about because we're not allowed to talk about it. It's something that has been ingrained in us. So then I wonder why it was ingrained with that. Is that political? Is that, some type of...
Right. Generally, without telling you what it was, the issue is there's some food that's healthy that we think is healthy and I think it's healthy. And someone wrote an article and says it's not actually healthy.
Right.
And that scares the crap out of me to talk about that on the podcast.
Right.
Because honestly, I think it probably we'd find out that that's not true.
Right. Or it's not as extreme as it is. As they say it's not healthy and we say it is healthy. It's a little bit like everything, moderation. But
more importantly, if the object of our show is to be like the friendly reminder, hey, everybody think about wellness, do a wellness check-in, here's some information about ways that might help you with physical wellness or mental wellness, whatever it is. Why do we have to go after an industry or get into a debate on what side we're on?
Well, we're not, because we're not going to air it. So blah.
So you can say whatever you want within boundaries. And I'm just trying to set the boundaries.
Yeah. So we have this argument all the time, guys. We don't make this podcast that just like with 2 seconds.
Okay. So you should be more free.
24 hours.
You should be
to
more
do this 5-minute segment because we argue the whole time.
So you should be more free to say what you want. And I should be meaner. So people could see my other side.
No, I don't really care. It's just be not meaner to me.
Please remember that we're not providing advice. We hope to inspire you to work towards balance, and we urge you to consult with qualified people if you need advice. The people on the show are speaking in their personal capacities. Their views expressed are their own, and don't represent the views or opinions of their outside contacts, their employers, or anyone else. We try to get things right, but we can't guarantee everything we say is correct, or that the things we talk about will work for you. Let's be well together, and let's be sure to do that in a safe way. So that's the end of the podcast, and today's our first time when we're coming from locations all across Canada, kinda, because Sheila's with her sisters in Newfoundland, having a great time, and Sammy and I are in Kitchener, but Sammy's on Zoom. So I think I'm going to be a bit quick, because I know both of you had some pretty busy weeks and are doing stuff now. For my part, good news on the running front. I'm finally, my long runs are starting to work out better and everything's feeling good. So I'm getting more and more confidence as I go. I'm pretty crushed by watching what's going on in the United States right now. I've put some thoughts together about, what happened with turning aside Roe and Wade, and I've actually recorded something. I don't know what to do with it yet. So if you're interested in hearing my thoughts, shoot me a message through Instagram, whether it's private or not. I'm still trying to debate what to do with that. But in any event, let's set that aside for a minute. And I'm going to turn things over to Sheila and Lori, her sister, who are sitting here in Newfoundland.
Yeah. Hi. So we are in Newfoundland for Lori's birthday. So I'm here with Lori.
Hi.
And we're also here with my other sister, Anne-Marie, and Joanne, and my mother. So we're here for the week. Pretty exciting. It's actually very hot here, and it hasn't rained at all yet. So that's very nice. In a few minutes, we're on our way to Bay Bull to go on a boat to see whales and puffins and hopefully icebergs and
wow.
So we're going to have so hopefully the weather stays like this because it is absolutely beautiful. But right now we're enjoying ourselves, and that's,
There's a beautiful rooftop patio for meditation, and we're finding time to stretch and do yoga and all that great stuff.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So as long as we don't run out of money.
Yeah. Always the concern when you're away.
And what about you, Sammy? What's going on with you?
Yeah, I had a pretty busy weekend. I actually went to the Blue Jays game with my mom and stepdad and boyfriend David, and it was a lot of fun. They did lose, but what can you do? It's more about the experience. And also went to the Backstreet Boys concert. So that was a little blast from the past, and it was great.
Backstreet's back. All right.
Didn't I read that Drake was on stage for a bit?
Yeah, Drake showed up as the sixth boy. Yeah. And it's funny because I've never seen him in concert, but I've been to 2 concerts in Toronto, and both times he showed up. So I feel like I've seen him now.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. It was a great weekend. So now I'm just getting back to work and, getting house stuff ready, and that's about it.
Okay.
How's your house going?
Oh, it's good. Oh, it's great. Yeah. Slowly moving, but we have a kitchen install date. So that's exciting. And yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's awesome. I guess Sammy and I head back to work while Sheila does some sightseeing. It's amazing because it's really hot, but Newfoundland, the weather changes a lot. It can change during the day, so hopefully everything works out great. And I remember one time when we went back in 2002, it was hot in July, but when we went out into the water, it was cold. We were all bundled up in blankets. So have a great time, and with luck, you will see some whales today.
Yes.
That is it for today's show. Please try and make wellness a priority.
You deserve it.
If you feel the need to talk to someone or ask for help, please do that.
Accept yourself for the person you are.
So long.
Adieu.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Goodbye.